welcome everybody to this edition of Sports Night. I'm your host, Parker Gatewood, and pleased to be joined by Tommy Mantice and Brandon Vickery. Thanks for being here, guys.
Always a pleasure, Parker.
Anytime you need me.
And on this edition of Sports Night, guys, we're gonna touch on the Valpo baseball and softball seasons as they are just getting underway or nearing Horizon League play. But before we get to that, let's start off with Valpo men's basketball. Before we headed into spring break, their season was kind of concluding, and now we're all back here after we departed our separate ways, and now we're all back. We got to see the season unfold. I want to know your guys' reactions to the season as a whole. Maybe put a letter grade on it, and just tell me how you feel this team ended. Did they end well? Are they headed in the right direction? What are your guys' thoughts? Tommy, let's start with you.
All right. Well, it couldn't have ended worse for the Crusaders in terms of confidence when you lose a game to Columbia on a game-winning jump shot in the last seconds. So in terms of that, it's not good. But overall, we got to take kind of a step back and realize this is a season for experience, a season just to kind of get your young guys going, because again, you lose so many seniors last season. It's kind of hard to build that back and expect to win like they did years before. So if you have to put a grade on it, I would have to say close to a B to a B minus. Again, they have a lot of talent, a lot of young talent. They just couldn't kind of string games together. That was their biggest problem. I think Milwaukee, they beat them twice during the regular season. They could have beat them again. Play well against UIC, but then just couldn't string three together at the end. That was really their Achilles heel, and that's why we're sitting here and it's the end of the season.
Yeah, I think Tommy hit on a lot of great points. When you zoom out and take a look at this Valpo basketball season, think about where this team was coming into the year. The entire starting lineup from last season graduated. You're coming in with 0 returning starters. Levante Doherty is your most experienced player, and he was the 6th man last season. And you had 5 solid starters and 6 seniors overall that carried this team into the NCAA tournament a season ago. So when you look at a season that ended with a record over 500 at 18-16, and you had no experience coming in. You relied on 4 freshmen really to play quality minutes throughout the season. I think that you have to be satisfied with the performance of this team this year. So many people whether it's from the community or alumni or surrounding the program, are quick to be critical of the team because Valpo was ousted early in the Horizon League tournament in the quarterfinals against Milwaukee, because the Crusaders once again did not win a postseason game, which they have not here in quite some time, losing in the first round to Columbia, as Parker mentioned in the CIT. But I think overall this was a huge step forward for this Valpo team. And yes, the buzzer beater against Columbia is disappointing, but I think the bigger disappointment is the Milwaukee game. In the CIT, you're playing without 2 of your seniors in Jordan Coleman and Bobby Capobianco, and it's the CIT. The intensity wasn't really there surrounding that game. But overall, if I had to put a letter grade on the season, I'm going right with Tommy. I'm saying a B minus.
And to kind of put things into perspective, moving forward, this is a very young team, and they have a lot of potential on this roster right now, and with recruits coming in. We're going to have a very fresh, young team next year. What do you guys think moving forward for the Crusaders as far as winning the Horizon League and perhaps getting into the tournament? How many years are we talking? Or could it start next season? Is it down the road? What do you guys think?
It could be next season. I mean, really, we never know with the Horizon League. We know that Green Bay is losing their senior. They're losing one senior. They still have Sykes coming back. Alec Brown, is it Alec Brown? Alec Brown is coming back, or he's gone. So that hurts them a lot. I think that, again, this whole team, this whole tournament is wide open. If Milwaukee can win, anybody can win. Let's be serious. So.
Well, disrespect there.
That's
for the Panthers.
That's just what I've seen. So, again, we could win it next year, and it's going to help that we have so much experience. I think this team is going to surprise a lot of people next year.
Yeah, if the question is whether or not Valpo can compete next year, I think the answer is pretty clear. I mean, we're not talking about a Cubs-style rebuilding process here. We're talking about Valpo basketball that competes year in and year out. They competed this year for the Horizon League title. They had a chance going into the tournament. As Tommy mentioned, anybody can win going into the Horizon League tournament. And certainly with the core coming back, with all the freshmen that will be back. They're going to have great guard play and great outside shooting. The inside presence is really replacing Musa Gay and Bobby Capobianco is really where the bigger question is. As huge as Levante Doherty was, you feel pretty comfortable with Keith Carter and Lexus Williams taking over the guard slots for the Crusaders in the starting lineup. But can Valpo compete right away next year in the Horizon League? We're not talking about the Big Ten here. We're talking about the Horizon League. I think yes.
All right, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for your opinions. And that is it for the Valpo men's Crusader basketball team. They will start up again next year, and we'll be very excited to see them. We are going to conclude for this segment. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back, so don't touch that dial, because we are going to be talking Valpo baseball and softball. Stick around.
On a campus plagued with terrible weather, Valpo students suffer from boredom with no motivation to leave their room. They begin to search for free movies and stumble upon Valpo's new free movie streaming website, where you get unlimited free access to recent movies like Despicable Me 2 and Jobs at the tips of your fingers. So if you're feeling bored, then don't wait. Grab some friends, find a seat, and enjoy a movie on movies.valpo.edu.
Welcome back to Sports Night. Once again, Parker Gatewood here with Tommy Mantice and Brandon Vickery. And guys, we wrapped up the men's basketball portion of the show. Now we're going to go into the sport that is upon us right now, or sports, really, plural. It's baseball and softball. And I want to kind of lead off with a tough question, if you will. And both teams made the the NCAA tournament last year, had really stellar seasons. This year, been a kind of a bumpy and rocky start for both sides. So I want to get your take, and I want to know who has had the more disappointing start to this season, the softball team or the baseball team? Brandon, you start.
Parker, I mean, you don't mess around. You ask the tough questions right away. Hard-hitting journalism with this question, Parker. But when you look at the records of the teams, I mean, baseball 9-10, it's always a struggle early in the season when you're going, and this applies to softball as well, but when you're going to warm weather states and you're playing against teams that have been practicing outdoors all winter long, and we don't need to tell our viewers what the weather's like here in Valpo. I think they're very aware that spring has not yet quite sprung in northwest Indiana, but I think that plays a role when you're playing against some of these teams. For baseball, it's been kind of up and down. For softball, when you look at a 6-19 record, they're 13 games under 500. That's a little more than just, yes, a quality schedule. And I talked with the head coach, Jordan Stevens, several times this spring, and they've played the toughest schedule they've had since he's been here.
3 ranked teams.
Yeah, 3 ranked teams, number 2 Oregon among them. And they've really played well against the ranked teams. They've lost all of those games, but they've been competitive against those ranked squads. But at the same time, 6-19, I mean, is a little bit disappointing. And they've been hurt time and time again by the big inning. When you look at Youngstown State last weekend, they split a doubleheader with the Penguins and a big Horizon League doubleheader to start the season in Youngstown. And they scored 9 runs and lost the second game of that doubleheader. And the big innings where they've struggled to limit the damage have really hurt the softball team. So I think that there's still time for both teams. It's not time to hit the panic button yet. But out of the two, there has to be more disappointment surrounding the softball squad.
Again, you said the beginnings, but another problem is they're not really hitting the ball well. They're not scoring a lot of runs. Again, look at all these teams they've played. They've been shut out numerous amount of times. A couple of games where they've scored 1 run. That's a bigger problem. You got to at least put up some runs, get some runs going. I Again, baseball, like we said, it's a bumpy run, of course, in the middle of the year. And again, they have had a lot of games canceled due to the weather. I mean, a lot. So, and softball hasn't had as many. And softball was, again, these teams are supposed to win the Horizon League. It's so early too. I mean, both these teams only played a couple games in the Horizon League, so it's so early to say. But again, 6-19. Your winning percentage is 24.24%. It's not good. It's not good.
It has to be kind of tough, guys, to get into the flow of the season when you have games canceled, the times change, the days are changing. They're trying to squeeze games in whenever they can based on the weather. The locations are switching. Home games are switching to road games, and you're playing at DePaul instead of UIC. It's just constant changes to this schedule, and it's hard to get going.
Absolutely, and yeah, that's how you can't really say this could be a disastrous season. There's no way you can tell that because again, they haven't played games consistently. The next baseball game for the men's team is in April 1st, April 2nd, and that's what 4 or 5 days, and they haven't played in a while, so it's going to be tough. But they have to respond.
Were there any games during the first part of the season for both of these teams? Were there any games that kind of stuck out to you guys that maybe brought up the idea that, hey, wait a minute now, this is a very good team. Why are they performing like they are? Have there been moments, I guess you could say, during the season where you saw the Horizon League champs from last year in these two teams?
I think with the softball team, certainly, and we kind of touched on it in the sense that they played well against some of the top-tier competition. And the win-loss result of some of these games, when you're playing top 25 teams in the nation, isn't always indicative of how you played in these games. Against Arizona, they ended up being blown out by the end of the game, but they were really competitive for most of that game. Against Oregon, it was a close game. Against Louisiana, very close as well. So I think the most frustrating thing for this softball team is some of these close calls. There hasn't really been that moment where, while they picked up this victory and you feel like, where has this team been the whole year? They've been pretty consistently inconsistent. But we have seen those moments within games where here's the defending Horizon League champs.
Again, and I'll even touch on baseball. Against Texas A&M, they played them a couple weeks ago, actually a while ago. Only a few weeks ago. They took 2 out of 3 in Texas A&M. So, and then they didn't play for. They got all these games for Milwaukee taken out. So
and those are winnable games.
Those are winnable
too,
games.
Against Milwaukee at home, and at Oakland this weekend canceled, also winnable games.
Yeah. So again, it's so tough to say. It's such a hard and loaded question, and has a lot of different things. But there's definitely no reason why we can't, write the season off. We have a lot of games left and a lot of games to make up. So. It'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting ride the rest of the way.
There are a lot of games left, and that is what we are going to talk about when we come back. We will be touching on the schedule ahead and what the Crusaders face going into the latter part of their season and heading into Horizon League play. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dick Vitale of ESPN, and I'm on VUTV. It's awesome, baby, with a capital A.
Welcome back to Sportsnite. I'm Parker Gatewood, and we just got done, guys, talking about the basketball team. We wrapped them up earlier in our show, and now we just recently touched on the kind of disappointing starts for both the softball and the baseball team, but we're going to put that beside us and we're going to throw it in back of us, because now we're looking towards the future, and we are just approaching the kind of meat of the Horizon League schedule-wise. I want to know, what are you guys thinking for this kind of home stretch of games? I mean, we're about midway through the season here. Are things looking up for both Crusader baseball and softball? Tommy, start us.
I think it's hard to say. Again, we talked about this earlier, but once you get back into this, we're talking about more Horizon League games. We're going to see Wright State a few times, and before that, we play Notre Dame at Notre Dame, which is only in South Bend. I think the Notre Dame game, and then they put Northwestern only 8 days later. I think it's going to be, those two games are going to be kind of big, because they tell you more about out-of-conference games and how big these teams can be. If you can beat a Notre Dame team who's pretty good, and then Northwestern, you can be a pretty good team. Again, I can see them winning those games, and as we go down, it's just Horizon League games. They have a few games on the road, too. It's kind of tough at Wright State starting April 4th. And then one home game at Northwestern. Then they'll go back on the road to Youngstown State. But, yeah, a lot of road games in April. April might be a little bit tough, but once we get into May, we'll see a few more home games. We have a nice 2 series games against Wright State and Youngstown State at the end of May. And then May 7th, they play Western Michigan. So, we want to see more of a push at the end of May. I think that'd be more important. I think they can win a lot of games there. April, you might see a little bit of a skid, but not too much. I think they're going to really build up and be fine throughout the season.
Yeah, Tommy, I'm ready to be optimistic. I mean, we had the disappointment at the end of the basketball season. We had the disappointment of the start of the softball and baseball season. So it's time to be optimistic for these Crusader teams moving forward. I think the softball team actually might have a better shot to win the league than the baseball team does, despite the fact that the softball team's record is much worse than the baseball teams. Because of the way the schedule works out, over the course of this next month, the softball team is going to have a lot of home games, and the baseball team was done no favors by these cancellations, as I mentioned. These games are not going to be made up against Oakland and Milwaukee, so that kind of throws a wrench into the whole Horizon League season for baseball, because now you have more away games than you do home games, and you're losing games against teams that you feel like you should probably beat, and you're having to play the upper level competition. You just lost 2 out of 3 at UIC last weekend. Softball has shown early in the season the pitching was doing well, and then the hitting has now come around, but the pitching and defense is kind of fallen off the map. So I think once they can get everything going at once, the softball team could be dangerous in the Horizon League tournament for the 3rd straight year.
Where do you guys kind of see both teams finishing in the Horizon League? And not to put you on the spot here, but you know, strength in this mid-major Horizon League. Where do you see the Crusaders? We'll start with the baseball team. Then we'll hit on the softball team. But Brandon, where do you see them finishing in the Horizon League play going into the tournament?
I think this is a middle-of-the-pack team in the regular season. Again, baseball could be dangerous in the tournament as well, but I think at best 3rd for the Valpo baseball team in the regular season.
I agree. I think with the scheduling that they've had and all the cancellations and the weather, it's been tough, and they are going to have a tough month here coming up. So they have to be 3rd. I think 3rd is a good spot.
And softball as well?
Yes, softball. I think they can finish 2nd in the Horizon League in the regular season.
Even after the crazy bad start that they've had.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fresh start when you start league play. So Valpo's 1-1. They're right there. The 6-19 doesn't really mean anything because it was all non-conference games. Valpo 1-1 after the Youngstown State series. They showed that they really should have won both those games. The offense put up 9 runs against Youngstown State. In the first game, they beat an ace pitcher for the Penguins that went to Valpo High School here locally. So I think that there were some signs to be optimistic about last weekend. I think they can finish in the top 2. UIC is always very good as well. That'll be a huge series this weekend, Saturday and a doubleheader on Sunday with UIC.
Yeah, again, and Brandon, you talked about the one inning that really has killed them, and that's just until I see them fix that, I'm still going to be a little skeptical. second is a little high for me. I think, again, middle of the pack, 3-4, I think is going to be good for them. Once they cure that, once a team usually gets over the hump and kind of concentrates and gets those one innings out of the way, then they can be a dominant team, but we just haven't seen that. That could take a while. So we'll wait and see on that. I think second is a little too high for them.
We will wait and see. And we're going to have a fun time doing it, too. Boy, I'll tell you, baseball season is here. The major league season is just kind of graced us with its presence. And now the collegiate season is kind of midway through, like we've been talking about.
Maybe eventually they'll play some home games, Parker.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Maybe we'll get to go out and spit the seeds and all that good stuff. Buy a hot dog,
Big
watch
League Chew.
Valpo baseball and softball. Big League Chew.
Big League Chew.
It should
I
be
haven't
a
had that in
fun
while.
time. And we've had a fun time on here, absolutely, today. I thank you very much, Brandon and Tommy, for joining me today. And thank you for joining us and making us a part of your day. Sports Night. We always love having you, and have a great day, Valpo.